Thanks everybody for coming to the .NET user group. Quick show of hands, how many first timers do we have? Anybody? Cool, Julie, great. Miranda, sure, okay. We know Miranda though, that's okay. But glad to have everybody. Tonight we're going to have 5 panelists from various different local tech employers just giving advice on interviews and resumes and other questions that you might have. Hope you came prepared with questions. If you didn't though, we do have some that we've kind of chosen ourselves ahead of time to just kind of common questions that might be things that people would ask. So first off, does anybody have any question that they just really want to ask that they want to make sure gets covered? Do they want to go first? Any volunteers?
Can we turn off the house music so that we can hear you better?
That's a good question. Can we?
We don't actually want people to hear us because we don't.
Right. We are making this up.
We're on video.
Oh,
Tim said there's no wrong answers. I think there's wrong answers.
Yes. The answer is yes. Good question. There's also multiple seats available closer if you would like to interact better.
It's the splash
It's the
zone.
splash zone,
Yeah.
that's right.
The splash zone. Okay. All right, well, let's just start off with resumes then. So, does anyone have any questions about resume? No, we'll skip it then, okay. No? All right.
Have you already introduced us?
Yeah, let's do introductions. Let's do that. Okay. We'll just start down that end. Introduce yourself, what you do, where you work, and also if you happen to have any open positions that you're looking to hire for that you want to mention, feel free to.
Sure. So, Greg Johnson, I handle all things people for Classy Llama. We're an e-commerce agency here in town. And we do have several open positions, developers, front end and back end. We've got project managers. We've got, I just found out, a marketing role. We've got a junior dev role. We've got all sorts of stuff that we're hiring for. So,
Great.
Cool. I'm Ben Pomerenke. I work for Worldwide Technology. I'm a software developer by trade. I do some leadership activities in our office here in Springfield as well. We have a UX consultant position open, a delivery lead position open. It's very similar to project management, but our special flavor of it. Quality assurance engineer opening. And one I found out about today is a cloud architect position. Not specifically for our office here in Springfield, but for the general worldwide services. So that's all we got.
Okay, John Alexander. So I'm the COO and founder, and I've got a co-founder here with me, Eric, back there that you guys may know. IonWave Technologies. So we do public sector procurement software for government agencies. About 35 employees. Been here 17 years. We're hiring for multiple development positions, so we do .NET, obviously, and generally most of our development positions kind of do full stack, so kind of front end all the way back to the database. So.
Hi, I'm Maranda Provance. I'm Director of Engineering at Mostly Serious, and we're a local digital agency, so we're building websites, mobile applications sometimes, and doing marketing, digital marketing, and things of that nature. We are the smallest shop, I'm pretty sure. We've only got 12, and a development team of 3. And we don't have any open positions right now, but we're, always looking for the right fit. So if you're interested looking for a job or think you're going to be looking for a job soon, definitely feel free to reach out.
All right, and I'm Tim Franklin, as I may have mentioned earlier. I'm the Director of Product Development at a company called Gravitate. We have an office here, about 25, and then another 25 that are out in the DC metro area, Washington, DC, Virginia. And we write software for associations, but we also specifically have a data analytics platform that my team is responsible for, and we built as our own product that we're marketing. And we do have open positions. We have a back-end engineer position on my team. We have a couple different .NET development positions on the services side. And then I think we have a project manager position as well. And I just recently heard that we're interested in potentially getting a product development intern to help write Python code to build some integrations for different systems with us. So yeah, so definitely reach out to us. We'll be around a little bit afterwards as people schedules allow, and so feel free to come up to us and ask individual one-on-one questions too if you have interest or if you just want to learn more. Okay, so first question I'm going to throw out there: what do you look for most on an applicant's resume? Who wants to take that as a first answer? Anybody? Go
I'll
ahead.
take it. I'm definitely looking for attention to detail. Something that's pretty important in a development job. You know, there's a lot of balls in the air with any type of software that you're building. And being able to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's, literally, is, you know, a big skill. So even if you don't have the best grammar skills yourself, if you have someone review your resume and review your cover letter, to me that qualifies as attention to detail. You know, you care about quality, even if you know you don't have all the best language skills or grammar skills. That's okay. At least you know what's good and you know how to elevate yourself.
I would second that as well. It's important, and it's really your first glimpse that the company has of you and what you're presenting to them, and it also shows how much you care about the job that you might be applying for, is to make sure you put your best foot forward. So attention to detail is key. Anything else?
That would have been my number one as well. I mean, I can't tell you how many resumes I've seen where the bullets don't line up. There's different fonts, misspellings. It's unbelievable.
Should all be
Yeah, I
Comic
mean, you don't
Sans,
want
right?
that in
Comic
your software,
Right,
so
right,
why would
right.
that be okay?
It'll
on
just
a
get you
resume?
screened out right off the bat.
Yeah.
Then I think for us, that we're looking for experience. Even if you're straight out of school, like what have you done on the side? Maybe if you're straight out of school, what else have you done? You know, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, something that a lot of people don't realize is they almost copy pasted job description as
Right.
their bullet points. So I have no idea what you actually have contributed to. Okay, yeah, you are on a team of developers and you collaborate. What did you collaborate on? And so give actual examples of what you've done. Maybe give quantifiable stats or whatever, and say this is the tech that I used, this is how I used it, and things like that, because that gives me a much clearer picture of what you've actually done as opposed to just what your job description was.
Right.
For me, I try to get the thing that's the hardest thing to get out of a resume, which is try to see if I can tell that there's a passion for development. Usually that comes in the form of extracurriculars, but just the way people describe what they work on can sometimes show that as well. So I try to not just have the passion, but also some skills. So things like what type of projects you worked on, not necessarily specific languages, but kind of general tech stacks, just to see if they align with the things we're actually looking for.
I know just from personal experience recently, I looked at over 200 resumes for one of our positions that people were applying from, and it gets very boring very quick. So if you can do something to make your stuff stand out, whether you format it in an extra nice way, or maybe you inject a little bit of humor, but still be truthful. Always be truthful on a resume. Don't inflate anything on what you're saying, but just talk about what you contributed and what you're passionate about. But yeah, that just kind of helps you stand out more to me while I'm looking through a whole bunch of other just very, very similar resumes from other people too. Go ahead.
I think he had his hand up a while ago. Let him go.
Go
How
ahead.
fast do you go to the next one? After one page or half page or 2 pages?
What do you mean by
How
pages?
Of resume, length of resume, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
It can be super quick.
I know.
So if the formatting's jacked up and looks dumb, I'm not reading any of it. And I think, I know I'm stealing one of your questions later, but
Please do.
length is not a big deal. Like if you have something to justify 2 or 3 page resumes, that's great. But it shouldn't be fluff. I mean, it ought to add value to you selling yourself. So, you hear it needs to be 1 page. No, not at all, but you better not just copy paste a bunch of stuff that you really haven't done,
Does anybody have a differing opinion on that?
I mean, mine's not very official, so take this with a grain of salt. I like the 1 page because I like the idea of having to prioritize what you're telling the potential employer. It's not because I don't want to read 10 pages. The reality is I won't read 10 pages. I never read assigned reading in class when I was in high school. But something that's succinct and somebody that's taken the time to fit it in a succinct one. I will say I do like the succinct first page.
Yeah.
With something like see more details with the additional pages, so that first glance I can get the succinct version, and if I want to dig further in, I get the other one. But usually what we do is we have people fill out a questionnaire to give us those other details. And so that's consistent with all of our candidates. So the extra information is not as valuable to us until we actually request it.
I think sometimes having multiple columns or different formatting you can do to put more on one page while not crowding it all together is helpful, especially if you're just calling out like certain skills that you've done or certain experiences that are succinct in particular, that you can just say, you know, well, here's my coursework, or here's skill, you know, languages I've written in, or whatever else in an area that's just you know, wise use of space helps, because then you can stand out more. But also just grouping it is really important too. So I don't care as much about the second page or so, but especially if you're just adding generic stuff that I'm gonna have to sift through, you know, make it easy for me to find what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and there's I don't know how exact this stat is, but most, at least recruiters and HR people, look at resumes for 6 seconds or less before making a decision. And so the most important, if you look at like heat mapping of where like their eyes go to, it's always on the first quarter of the first page. So everything in that section is super critical. You got to let them know exactly what you have worked with. You got to like maybe have a 2 or 3 second or 2 or 3 sentence, not objective statement, but just like a summary of this is who I am and what I've done, and then list out the tech stack, like he was saying, maybe like significant projects or accomplishments. Don't worry about the school unless you've graduated within the last year. Maybe have that at the bottom of the resume, because what's most important, at least for me, maybe you guys can say something different, but is not necessarily what the degree is, but what you've actually done.
For sure.
So that first quarter of the first page is really critical.
So just to follow up on that, what do you all look for if an applicant is more junior and doesn't have a lot of experience after school? Are you looking, or do you want them to have their course projects, or are there side projects they might be doing at the top as opposed to that?
The hope is that they have done something outside of school, where they've maybe messed around with open source stuff. They've actually have a GitHub that actually has something in it, because I've seen a lot of GitHub links where it's like, why do you even have this on your resume? But course, like capstone projects or whatever that they've actually done that they can point to specific things that they did, super critical, because then like it shows, okay, you didn't just go to school, but you, like he said, you have a passion for this.
Did we answer your question already? You have a different
You
one?
did. No, it was the length. 1 page, 2 page, front, back.
Yeah, that's a common question, so that's good. Good. Okay. And you touched on the next one too. Should I include?
Another hand.
Tiffany's got a
Oh,
question.
great. Sorry.
Well, I wanted to piggyback on something that Greg just said. So if the resume contains links to like GitHub or a personal profile or even a LinkedIn, are you going to those? Are you looking at
Absolutely.
Every time. If it makes that initial screen, right? Because I'm looking for what he said. I'm looking for passion. I'm looking for same attention to detail in your LinkedIn profile. I'm looking at your Facebook if I can find it.
Right.
I'm looking at everything before I'm going to waste my team's time with an interview.
Literally goes to your house.
Google Maps, you know.
Right.
Street view.
Yeah, yeah. Is your yard cut? You know?
Oh no.
And what Greg, or maybe it was Ben too, mentioned too, within your GitHub, like if you're just copying libraries and copying the source code of that into your GitHub, we're gonna be able to tell, you know, and no, don't just pull up a bunch of extra code and put it in there. Like show us what you can do with it, and what you're interested in. Doesn't, like, for me, we're not developing video games at my company. But if you really like developing video games as a side thing, that's cool, because you're learning and you're doing other stuff. So I still want to go look at those projects and see what you're doing with it. It doesn't have to be exactly relevant to what my job is hiring for, but I want to know what you're passionate about, and I'm going to ask you about it. It also gives me an easy thing to just say, hey, tell me about this thing that you've been doing, and that's an entry point into the conversation. Yeah, questions?
So you guys place a high value on like the readmes, like has all the information about the project? Do you guys look through those at all, or?
I think it's really helpful to have that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I look at GitHubs, sadly, I look at the commit history, because that tells you a lot
Right.
about a developer. But yeah, the README is the first thing you see. So.
And it's another opportunity too to show a little bit about who you are in terms of your soft skills. Again, attention to detail, you know, how thorough are you, how well can you explain what's going on, or at least if you're not like creating a whole guide, which I wouldn't necessarily expect for a personal project, maybe just explaining like how someone would set it up, you know, how they would get it up and running on their machine. And then I might even try to do that if I'm interested enough.
Yeah, I have tried to compile things from GitHub
Yeah.
that people have submitted in resumes.
But
Sometimes
if I can actually like set up a project pretty quickly from a README, I'd be pretty impressed. You know,
Right.
I would think this is a little bit more of an experienced developer. They know what they're doing. They've worked on a team. They understand the importance of this stuff.
Any other follow-up resume questions or other questions people want to ask? Yeah.
Cover letter was mentioned. Do you all place a lot of value in having a cover letter attached to a resume? And if so, what do you look for?
Yeah. So cover letters. Anyone?
So, go for it.
We do that a little bit as a test. So we, in our instructions, like to apply, when we go do a job posting, I'm telling people do not apply through Indeed, submit a resume this way. It's a test. So I want to see, can you write a letter? Can you just communicate? I'll tell you one thing I've seen a lot of that's a total no-no is I've gotten probably 50 cover letters that have the exact same paragraph copied pasted. So they found it somewhere and they've copy pasted it in, and it's just the most generic, bland paragraph ever. And I'm like, so yeah, in a cover letter I would say, listen, I've looked at your company. This is why I'm interested in you. I'd personalize that every time, even though it takes a little extra time. But that's a test for us. It's a communication test.
It's going to make you stand out and
Yep.
have the ability to show your passion, both for development and possibly for the company you're applying to as well. So it definitely is it gets my interest to see a personalized cover letter.
Yeah, if you are in, he said that he had a role with 200 plus
200 applicants at least.
If you, like he said, if you can do something to stand out, while the cover letter is not necessarily a required thing, it's kind of almost like insurance. Like if you don't need it, it's whatever. But that one time where all of a sudden you're that 1 in 200 that you did need it, it's really good to have it. And so just to have it just in case somebody actually reads those things is just another way to stand out.
Yeah, just to add on to something that you were talking about earlier too, is if you personalize it and you do a little bit of research about the company, that really for us plays across not just resumes but also phone screens and in-person interviews and the whole process, because I want to know that you're interested in my company and what we do, because you're applying to potentially further your career with us. You feel like that's important enough to understand, and I get really bored explaining the same thing over and over on phone screens if you have not at least looked up what our website and see where we're located or what we do and the software that we write or whatever else. It's great when someone has a question for me about the software, because then that piques my interest, that shows me that they care, and then I can skip over stuff that I otherwise have to just kind of repeat every time.
I will say I don't do a lot of the filtering of resumes. In my role, I usually will see them when it's time to actually get the interview. The cover letter, I do thoroughly enjoy reading cover letters. It's just extra input to the interview. Sometimes I find good questions to ask based on them. So because I'm later in the process, it's kind of a joy when I see a cover letter. It doesn't necessarily affect my yay or nay on a candidate because we've already committed to interviewing them, but it may affect the quality of the interview.
And also people that are fresh out of college or possibly changing careers, cover letters are really, really good, because I've had several people that if I just had their resume and they applied for a developer position, let's say, I would never think to interview them, but then they reach out to me with an email or cover letter and they say, hey, this is the situation, this is what I've done, this is why I think I would be super excited to work with you guys. And we actually have interviewed and hired some of those same people because they reached out and explained more than just what their resume showed.
The passion to learn is way more important than the skills you have right now.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that's probably true for everybody here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you can show that in a cover letter to kind of make up for the resume, that really can go a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how you want to see the self-learning path reflected on a resume? If it's not a traditional way of like a bachelor in computer science, or how you want to see it reflected for you to totally understand what did this person did do.
If they did
repeat the question back. You say the career path?
The
How do you
self-learning
reflect?
path, how you want to see it reflected on a resume.
Like
Okay.
if you did Code Academy or Free Code Camp or
Right.
Something like Audacity, maybe.
Yeah, I'm just
you know,
wanted to repeat it, so, because I know the audience, you don't have the microphone trained towards you, so I want to make
Ah.
sure everyone on the recording can hear too. Okay, so
Or
yeah.
maybe it's not like accepted in one of the companies, so that's why I'm asking, like, is it accepted? How you want to see it reflected on a resume, explained in a resume.
Okay.
I think that's where you get creative with the resume. And I think, what he said earlier, of that, they're going to look at the top quarter or half of that page. Somebody need to explain, and maybe the cover letter helps you as well. Listen, I'm a non-traditional path person. Here's what I've done to enter into the IT field.
Yeah, the few that I've seen that that ended up getting jobs. I mean, granted, the most important part is from that perspective is knowing what you're talking about when you get to the interview. But I would treat it as if they were jobs, right? So you did Code Academy. That was one of your jobs. Now, non-traditional paths usually have auxiliary jobs that are like what they're doing while they're learning this stuff. Those are important too because it kind of shows the balance. But I would maybe less highlight that and more highlight what you're doing to get on the path to computer programming. So one of the ones I did, this is my favorite story because he ended up being like a CIO somewhere. He was a meat packer before he interviewed with us. He worked at a grocery store, but his resume said that he had built like 3 apps, and it showed the progression. Like the first one was just learning how to do iOS development. The second one was like actually something somebody used, and the third one was like production ready app. And it was basically like those were his 3 jobs that he highlighted, and then below it was I work at a grocery store. Like he has a full-time job, but that's not where his passion lied, and he kind of highlighted that in his resume. So I would treat him, I mean, you are working in jobs that are getting you to where you want to be, and treating them like that, I think, in your resume is a very valid thing to do.
Yeah, and I think having a project. So if you're really it helps no matter what kind of training you have, because even if you have a 4-year CS degree, if you can't prove that you've actually coded something real, then that you're not going to stand out. But probably even more important with self-guided learning is to have actual projects to show. So a portfolio site, or GitHub links, stuff like that.
Certifications sometimes too, if they provide that. I know Microsoft has some certifications you can do, but there's a lot of other just different sites or other learning tools that could also say yes, you passed this benchmark, then I could at least get a general idea of you know these things. Even if you may not be an expert at it, you know enough about this that I could ask you about it, and you could have a conversation with me about it and learn more. Yeah, good question. Other resume questions? Anyone else? Yes.
So on a resume, you guys said you look at the GitHub. If you also have like a personal site with like more information on like projects you've done, more about you. Would you guys look at that too, or are you guys not really interested in that?
So just to repeat, do we look at personal websites that are linked as well? And and even as John said, even if you don't link it, we'll try and find it.
Yeah, I mean, what I would, in my experience, usually they're bad. So usually they've hurt the candidate more than they've helped. So you need to make sure it's good.
The personal website's amazing.
Yeah. send me a link.
Built it 10
later.
years ago. It's still amazing.
Yeah.
Even if it's like Bootstrap, are you guys still like okay with that?
I want to see what you did with Bootstrap.
Yeah.
I want to see you customize it, or you did something cool with it and you made something and it displays information. If all it does is just repeat the exact same information that's on your resume and looks just like a plain, boring Bootstrap website, and you've done nothing to make it more creative or to just do something where you can actually interact with it or something, then that's probably not helping that much. But I will try and look at those. Yeah, I just like to try and get to know somebody a little bit through what they've presented to me. So if you send me a link to it, especially, I'm going to try to look at it. If you get past some of the other things to make sure grammar, punctuation, spelling, formatting, all that stuff, as well as just some general content that I find interesting.
I mean, think of your personal website. I mean, kind of the way you should probably think about your resume. You're trying to tell a story to the interviewer. So if you treat it that way, you have the canvas. You can tell the story however you want. If you tell the story of 5 things that everybody and their brother knows how to do to build this site, you're not telling a very compelling story. Although that may be not. I mean, you may be more focused on the content. So yeah, maybe it's a boring site, but there's something really cool that kind of pops when you first get there. It's kind of your story to tell, and that's why we look at all these different angles. It's because they all tell a different side of the story, and so it's just another medium to tell the story.
And they're all a product. You're selling yourself. So you need to look at all of your resume, websites, GitHub, anything. Yeah, LinkedIn, Facebook. If your Facebook's open, all of it is selling your product. So you need to make sure that it's conveying the message you want.
Okay. Other resume questions? Okay. All right. We're going to move on to phone interviews, and then feel free to follow up with resume questions after too, if you have. Anyone have just a burning phone interview question they really want to ask first? There's too many hands to count. Which one? No? Okay. So we'll start off. How should I prepare for a phone interview?
Prepare. Like, actually prepare. Like you said earlier, if you get to the phone interview and I've had it where they're not even sure where they're interviewing before.
Yes.
What? And also, know what the company actually does. That's nice too. Have questions that are not just typical questions, even if you did have typical questions, that's better than not having anything. Just Google like phone interview questions on both sides, so you can literally get a script that a lot of people ask, like generic software development phone interview questions, and you can prepare for those things and write out a list of questions that you have about the company that are actually specific to the company. Because same thing with the cover letter. If you make it specific to the company and it shows just that you actually care and that this phone interview means something to you, that you're not just, wasting time.
And I think to add on to that, I would also make sure that you're scheduling a phone interview at a time that works for you as well as the company. Make sure it works for you. Mm-hmm. So I've had people who were walking back from class, and that was the time they scheduled their phone interview. The class didn't run long. They just said, yeah, about this time. And so I can't even hear them because of the wind in the background. And I can't, understand what you're saying, and it's difficult to communicate that. And so make sure that you're prepared, that you're relaxed. If you're sitting in traffic on your commute home, I don't think that's a good time to do a phone interview with you. I've rescheduled because of that, and just said, let's just do this another time. And maybe we do, maybe we don't, depends on the candidate. But because of the distraction, I want you at your best also. And it's for your benefit, but it's also for mine, because I don't want you to be distracted or to not be comfortable.
Yeah, I kind of have 3 standard parts to my phone interviews, so if any of you guys have a phone interview with me, I apologize. I always ask candidates, so the first 2 are questions I ask them. So what is it you know about our company, or how do you feel like you'll fit in our company? Kind of to see what kind of research they've done, or how they, what they expect the job to be. And then I always ask them for an elevator pitch. So describe yourself in your words. Tell me your story in 30 seconds to a minute. The short version, what's important to you. And then at the end, I always give 5 or 10 minutes of what questions do you have for me. And then everything in between is really just talking about the resume. But those are pretty standard, and it's usually those 3 things is where I actually make the decision. So I do follow up on details of the resume, like what do you really know about this technology, things like that. But usually the elevator pitch is all I really need to know if I want to actually interview somebody. Sometimes it's what kind of questions they ask at the end. Those are kind of 3 standard parts for my phone interviews. Granted, I haven't done a phone interview in a while, so it's been a couple of years. But
yeah.
Are there questions that you get that turn the interview, like, how quick can I make $100,000? Or, when can I be the project lead? Or, something that's really not appropriate for, a junior developer position. Someone, that's looking well beyond what you're looking to hire. Is that a red flag? They're not going to be with us very long.
Right.
This isn't a good fit.
So what questions should you not ask? And maybe also on the flip side, what questions could you ask to turn it if you feel like things maybe not going the right way, or if you want to make yourself stand out? But especially what should you not ask?
Those 2 good examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't ask how much money you can possibly make or when you can advance, how quickly, et cetera. Definitely. I have seen that.
How much vacation time do I get? It'd be a bad one.
Right. Don't start out asking that. Find that out later.
Yeah. So the question. So sometimes I'll ask, like, what do you actually want to be doing? Like, if you could write your own job description, tell me what you want to be doing. And I've had a lot of people. This isn't necessarily a question, but it ends up being a lot of the questions that they ask are basically, how can I get out of this job to do the job that I actually want as fast as possible? So kind of similar to like, how fast can I be the project lead? But if you're interviewing for a specific role, be interested in that role. Not that you can't move around later, but just you gotta actually start working there before you can actually do that. So that was a good one. But also one of my favorite questions that I used when I was interviewing is just to try and figure out if there are any red flags. Like, what are they? So I'd say, so if there was anything that you're cautious about or worried about me specifically, what are those things? So that way, I mean, they don't always say it, but if they do, you can potentially address it right then and there and maybe turn their ideas of what the potential red or yellow flag is about you into something like, it could have just been a miscommunication on your part or a misunderstanding of how they heard it. And so you get a chance to actually address that concern while they're in front of you, because once you leave that building, you don't have a chance to address it again. So that's one of my favorite ones to ask.
Yeah, and to have asked of me too, if I'm
For
interviewing
sure.
somebody else. Yeah, ask me, what are you concerned about, et cetera. And I generally will try and at least answer to some degree if that's the question asked, but it's not asked that often.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
It
very
just
helpful.
shows self-awareness,
Mhm.
and humility to ask that kind of question. So, and hopefully you ask it sincerely, but
Right.
it's definitely a great question to get if you're interviewing somebody.
Right. But I would save that towards the end, though. Don't start out with,
Yeah.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I am stunned to hear that advice, because it just has never occurred to me, nor have I had it happen
Mhm.
when I've been the interviewer, for someone to say, hey, are there any concerns, is there something else we can talk about in more depth, or that's really interesting. It seems universal that you would accept a question like that and not feel like it's out of bounds or inappropriate.
I think you ask it professionally and,
Yeah.
and you ask it sincerely, and that's a big part of it. And then if we don't feel comfortable answering, or if we don't want to give you the real answer or whatever, then that's up to us. But at least you put your foot out there, and you gave yourself an opportunity.
And that's also, if you're asking the interviewer that question, it's a tell for the culture of the company
For
as
sure.
well. If they're like, and they kind of flounder around it instead of giving you direct information, it could be like, I don't really have any red flags. I feel like I understand exactly what you said. That's fine too. But if they flounder around it and aren't direct with it, then that, to me at least, is at least a yellow flag, because that could be just how they communicate in that organization as well, and it might not be a place that you want to work.
So one of our practices that interviews our company, not the one that I'm part of, but has it's almost like a test, but like they ask a really hard question in the phone interview, and then they help the candidate through it if they don't know the answer. They ask the same question in the in-person interview, and they see if they have learned since the last interview. I mean, it's not a trap. It's like they literally want the person to know the answer to the question to be suitable for the job. But we've hired candidates that failed it in the phone interview and succeeded in the following interview, and that was a sign that they know how to learn and grow, even with something as simple as an interview interaction. And for us, that makes a big difference, because that's kind of how we work. We constantly learn and grow. And so, sometimes when you address something in a phone interview, or you realize what you messed up in the phone interview, doing your homework before you do the other interview is sometimes telling as well to the interviewers.
Yes.
So like after an interview, as an interviewer, what do you guys feel about like follow-ups and like the next couple days, and like sending an email like, hey, is there any other questions I can answer for you? Are you guys like those, or you guys don't like those, or what do you feel about
Yeah, it's a good question. You're reading off my list.
I emailed it
That's
out
good.
to everybody.
Oh, thanks, Greg. Yeah,
So we're super passionate and nitpicky about this. I want to see you follow up 100% of the time, preferably that day. When you get home, if I get an email from you saying, hey, thanks for your time today, appreciate it, you can send me questions at that point, but a thank you the same day, you're way ahead of most people.
Yeah.
It's honestly a test for us. We have not hired people. We've screened them because they didn't follow up after the interview.
Oh, so it's not like obnoxious. It's like something you guys want.
We want it 100%.
At some point, it can get obnoxious.
For
But-
sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, if we set an expectation of when we'll hear from you, I mean, for me, I tell everybody, like, feel free to bug the crap out of me. Like, I want you to know exactly where you're at. And it's surprising how few people actually follow up, even though I tell them, bug the crap out of me. Like, I want you to follow up with me. But with the follow-up that same day, saying thank you or whatever, you can even clarify something. Like, if you're like, I totally butchered that question, re-answer it. Say, hey, I've been thinking about this, because one, it shows that you've been thinking about it. Two, it shows that like you actually care. And it could, I've seen it turn interviews around where it was a no, and then the hiring manager's like, oh, okay, cool, let's go for it. So,
Because it's what he said. We all want to know that you can learn and you can be proactive to deal with an issue. So if there was an issue in the interview and you respond and address that, that's a win. Now you need to do it appropriately. You need to communicate well, but that can help you.
Yeah. I'd say even just a simple thank you for your time and let me know if you have any other questions. That goes a long way. And if you, big part of it is know the person's name that's interviewing you. They're not always the person who schedules it. And ask for their contact information if you don't have it already. Or ask the person who was your entry point to the communication with the company. Whoever scheduled the phone screen with you, if it's not the same person or whatever else, how do I get in touch with this person? Question.
I've heard you guys mention more than once about being a lifelong learner, always kind of growing. Is there a scope on that? Because I'm sure thinking like learning about biomedical history or learning a foreign language may not be something that's very important. So when you're looking for somebody that's a learner, is there a kind of a domain within which that's most important?
So to recap a little bit for the recording, just to make sure you can hear, lifelong learning, and is there a scope on how much you want to know about what they're interested in beyond? Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not to what their application is.
I think I could easily see those skills translating across topics. Probably if you're willing to get deep into whatever you're interested in, whether it's tech or not, you'd probably be able to do that for work too. So I think I'd see an example outside of the scope of development or whatever and think of that as a good thing.
I think it's important to have something that is technology driven, because 40 plus hours a week are going to be, you're getting paid to do technology driven learning. And so like it's important not to overwhelm all of your learning examples with non-technology examples. But I do think it's important to see multiple. One of the things that I don't interview that often, but I interviewed 4 years ago at a couple companies here, and one thing that kept coming up, it was the fact that I speak French. And I feel like every time it was, now I didn't make that majorly apparent, but it was something that was unique to me, that showed that I was willing to go outside of my comfort zone. And so it's a story I tell a lot when talking about diversity of learning. And I think having those examples and those highlights is the important part. Maybe just not overwhelming the story with all of them is kind of important. So maybe pick the most important few to you, that kind of highlight your specific enjoyment, and make sure you don't include a few technical ones as well, because that's really what we're looking for. But they are complemented by the other examples.
in a way that you can even describe that is, like in the summary at the top, you could say, I'm an avid learner. I love learning about everything from biomedical history to reptile husbandry. But for what I'm super passionate about is this specific tech thing. And then go deeper into how you've actually learned about that tech thing and how it's going to apply. So that way they can see, I'm super passionate about learning, I love learning, and here's the thing why it's important to you.
I think we actually look at that as an important thing too, is what else do you do outside of work, not just at work or school, not just technology, but are you a well-rounded person? Do you have other interests? Do you have hobbies? And it gives us something to talk about, as well as we give a glimpse of what it would be like to work with you, and share an office with you, or see you at the break room or whatever else, and you have some common interests, and then you say, oh, we have somebody at work who also is really into that. That's awesome, and you would have something common to talk about. Or, for example, one of my employees is really into World War I. He has a podcast. It's like a really popular podcast that most of the company doesn't even know that he does. But he's really passionate about it, and that's cool because it's also technology related, but it's also something different because that just kind of fuels his passion for learning. And I take that as okay, he's excited about learning this, and so he's going to be excited about learning other things too. You just want to make sure that if you're looking at that type of stuff, that you also have the technology interest as part of that in some way. Question? Other phone screen questions specific, or go ahead.
No, about the follow-up emails. What's the frequency after the thank you email? So there's a thank you email,
Mm-hmm.
and then like every week, every other week, like how frequent you want to receive a follow-up email if I didn't receive a feedback?
Right. So how quickly should you follow up again after a thank you, or how frequently should you follow up if you haven't heard?
It depends on if they set the expectation of this is when I want you to follow up, or this is when I should have an update, then possibly wait till then. But follow up with a thank you email, maybe 3 days, or every 3 days, 3 to 5 days maybe, because you do want to stay on top of mind, but you don't want to get to that obnoxious point either. Do you guys have a specific, like, it's hard to say what the obnoxious point is necessarily.
I like it when candidates ask me that. Hey, when can I follow up with you? And we'll set that expectation sometimes in the interview. Like if we're interviewing you first, listen, we've got 3 weeks of interviews. We're not going to know anything for a few weeks. We'll try and set that expectation if we can, but I like when people ask me.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's a pure function of business processes. I mean, we won't have all the feedback collected. We won't have all the hiring managers reviewing the feedback for 2 to 3 days. So I always tell people it'll take about a week for you to hear back from us. If you want to know sooner, please reach out. Like, I get it. You might, because like the worst thing for any company is to spend 6 to 10 hours interviewing somebody, combined interviewing time, and then find out they took another job because we didn't get back to them 4 hours earlier, right? So it's like I always try to set that expectation too. It's like if something comes up, feel free to reach out at any time. Just know that we're probably not going to have an answer for 3 to 5 days. And what we do is we have a recruiting team that I usually direct people to so that they don't feel like they're being obnoxious, which is kind of like what Greg does.
Bug the crap out of your
There are people whose job it is to be bugged, and there's people whose job it is to assess the candidate. Sometimes they're the same people, sometimes they're different, and that's an expectation I usually set with our candidates too. It's like, trust me, this person will not get bugged if you email them every day. I will get bugged if you email me more than once until you're hired, right? Because I've been doing other things. It's not that I don't want to hear from you. It's just, that's the way we've set up our organization. So.
And you touched on something that's important to know as well. So if you're interviewing multiple places and you really have your heart set on one and you're waiting on them, but you get another offer, you can communicate that to that first company and say, listen, really would like to work with you guys, but I've got this other offer. I need to kind of know the process because I got to give them an answer in 2 days or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's totally appropriate.
Do it in the right way though. Don't, because I've had other people almost push like,
For sure.
hey, like dangling a carrot, like I'm so
Yeah, you
good,
can't
I
make
got
a
this
threat.
other. Yeah, don't threaten
Yeah.
your interviewer. It usually doesn't go well.
Right.
But I mean, to his point, like if they set an expectation, like, hey, you're the first person that we interviewed. We've got another 3 weeks of interviews. It's okay to just like send another thing and say, hey, I know that you still have this process. I want to let you know I'm still super interested in you guys. And so if there's any other questions or anything that I can do to stand out or whatever, but follow up in between that time.
Yeah.
So you stay top of mind, because
Yeah.
a lot of times if there's like, I've had where I've interviewed like 20 or 30 people for a set of like 2 or 3 positions. It's hard to remember every single person at the end of those 3 weeks because you just like people blur because you're talking to so many people, resumes blur together. So you want to stay on top of mind, send out that email, shoot the text or call or whatever. And even like, this is another way to stand out that I've seen with candidates, send a letter, because nobody gets a letter anymore. Yeah, like an actual letter.
Okay.
Postal mail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it still exists. It's crazy.
Sign it with a pen, or if not, write it. If you want to handwrite it, that's awesome. But sign your name on it. So don't just type it up and mail it too.
Yeah, probably the best thank you scenario is send a thank you when you get home and then follow up with a card. I would not just do a paper card because it could get lost. It might take 3 days, but getting a card is unusual.
Yeah.
It happens very rarely.
Yeah, so bribe your hiring manager is what he's
Bring in,
And just a thank you
assorted
card.
fruits.
Yeah,
Fruit
exactly.
baskets are great. Yeah, whatever.
You know, a singing quartet.
With like small gifts.
Yeah, yeah.
Kidding. Yeah.
Just
I
kidding.
know.
We
Yeah.
do not condone that.
To the internet.
Yes.
Everyone be aware. But yeah, similar to Ben's role, we don't have at Gravitate just a designated recruiter that does everything, and so my job is to recruit for positions for my department, but I also have a lot of other things I'm doing, and so sometimes we're intentionally very quick to try and turn around and get a position filled. Other times it's we have a need, but we don't have an immediate need, and so we will communicate that to you ahead of time and set expectations. But yeah, just try and follow up with appropriately, and then know who to contact to follow up with. And so again, like I said, if I got an email every 3 days, I'd be annoyed. But that's because that's not my typical role. I'm trying to do other things too.
And this is an easy question to put in your question bag. When you get to the end of the interview and, hey, do you have any questions? Don't ever say no.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what's the time frame? What are you guys looking for? How many positions are you hiring? Those are super easy cake questions you can ask.
When should I follow up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of, no, I'm good. We had an interview today. That was the answer at the end of the at the end of the interview. No, I'm good.
Yeah.
Really? No questions?
Right. Other we have in-person interviews too. Is another thing we want to try and cover. We have about 10 more minutes. We can run a little long if we need to. But are there any other phone screen questions specific at the moment? No. Okay. Let's jump down into the in-person interviews then. So just kind of similar question. How should I prepare for an in-person interview as opposed to a phone interview? Anything different?
Know where it's at.
Yeah.
And time it.
Yeah.
Check out the parking situation.
Yeah,
We
the
used
guy-
to have an office
yeah,
downtown,
yeah.
so I always worried that people would get caught up in the parking stuff, and then I'd have to decide do I really need to judge them for being late, or should I give them
Right.
grace because
Right.
it's downtown and it's hard to park?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the
you
guy
can
today
scope
showed
that
up
stuff
exactly
out.
at 9 o'clock for a 9 o'clock interview. Show up 15 minutes early. I mean, I love it when I see a candidate pull in the parking lot because my windows face the parking lot, and they pull in 30 minutes early and they sit in their car for 15 minutes. I love that because I know they were prepared. I know they figured out and planned time ahead.
Right.
Always be early. Always, always, always. And then I'd say the same things earlier. Just know the company before you show up for an interview.
I definitely that, and I would drive the route beforehand. Don't just Google Map it, but actually literally drive it sometime beforehand. As long as there's not too quick of a turnaround, you don't have the availability to do so. Just so you know exactly where the office is at, and you can follow up with your point of contact if you can't find it, because you don't want to be late. It's great if you're early. Yes, Dr. Ford.
Do you ever, I want to phrase this differently maybe, so when the candidate comes into your office and maybe interacts with a support staff or receptionist or whatever, do you
Yes.
ever follow up with those people about the candidate's behavior?
Every time.
Yeah, just to repeat the question, do we ever follow up with other people at the company that may have interacted with the candidate? And to reiterate with John, yes, that is a definitely.
In fact, my assistant is trained to come tell me after they leave to come tell me the interaction.
Yeah. Don't cut somebody off in the parking lot. That might be the person that you're interviewing with. And
Hold
and
all middle
become-
fingers until after the interview.
Yes. Yeah, obscene gestures should be kept to a minimum at least.
At least, yeah.
And the one thing in that vein, we intentionally take people to lunch for interviews, especially when we do like a team interaction, and we will specifically look to see how they treat the waiter or waitress. So we'll take them to a restaurant where you get served intentionally so we can see how they treat that person.
Yeah. It's a character judgment.
Yeah.
And then also ask, maybe in the phone interview or when they're setting up the in-person interview, what is the dress code? Because it varies wildly, especially now. This is what I wore to work today, so I tell people you can wear shorts if you want to. It doesn't bother me. But if you went to a Jack Henry in shorts, you're not going to get hired. And so it's important to figure out what is the expectation on that. So because I want to make sure that.
Right.
And if they don't answer, you can drive past it, like he said, and watch the people coming out. It's a little creepy. Don't stay there for too long. Don't not from the bushes necessarily. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it never. I also work in a casual environment. This is my dress code, and we tell people dress casually, and they still come in with a shirt and tie. And honestly, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always tell people we are dress code agnostic, not dress code casual. So there's no judgment if you want to dress nicer. It doesn't affect my personal impression because I'm so used to working in a dress code agnostic place. But if it gives you the self-confidence to look better, great. Like, it's your interview. Like, dress how you want. You don't have to match. You just have to be at least the dress code or better. And so, like, if they are dressed casual, you know, you should come in shirt and tie. But yeah.
Yeah, we're the same. So our dress code's the same as these guys. I dressed up for you tonight, just so you know.
Do you have an interview there? That's
I did have one today. I'd always counsel you to dress more dressy than less dressy. You know, we had a candidate come in shorts and a t-shirt, and his behavior was bad in the interview as well, but I'll never think less of you for being overdressed. It shows you care about the position. So I would always dress nicer than you expect your people that are interviewing you to be dressed. And it'll never hurt you.
We try to communicate that up front, but also I think your first point of contact should answer that question, if not already tell you, just to set expectations. And it may be different from one location to another, even as far as where you're you know, within the company, depending on where you're interviewing at. So, you know, for example, our company is based in Washington, D.C., and that's where our clients are. And so that office tends to have a little bit nicer dress code, but for us, we're wearing video game t-shirts and cargo shorts.
Yeah.
So, you know, we try to make sure people are as comfortable as you can be, because we know in an in-person interview, you're already going to be nervous. And so we're trying to make it so that we get to know you and that you're not, you know, on edge as best we can.
I'd probably never wear shorts for an interview if it was me.
I probably wouldn't either, but that's,
I'd wear at least nice blue jeans.
I'd probably dress nicer than you dress.
You know,
nice.
I'd wear
At least,
slacks,
yeah.
you know, so,
yeah.
And, and most of us are casual environments now, but you want to impress. It shows you care.
And then on the, so dress up, but when it comes to like cologne or perfume, err on the side of less.
Yeah.
Because like I have several people that if somebody's wearing like way too much cologne or perfume, they just literally cannot sit through the interview because their nose is so sensitive. They're like, I can't do this. And so you don't want to do that to your interviewer.
Yeah.
Yes, follow.
My parents are more of the old school, and they keep telling me this, but I keep dismissing it. But just to kind of bury it and make sure it's dead and gone, they keep telling me that I should be like clean shaven. It's a better look. It's more professional. But I keep telling them today's trends is it's not quite so 1950s.
Right. And do you mean clean shaven as in completely clean shaven, or just trimmed beard or facial hair?
Like razor,
Okay.
clean shaven.
Yeah.
You look fine.
You'd be totally fine. 100%. We've definitely had people come in with ratty, ugly beards. That's probably a negative at some level.
Look
But-
groomed.
Yeah. Just personal grooming of all kinds. You know. Just
Of all kinds.
So, you know, check your nose before, you know, all that stuff. Just look professional, but be comfortable. Yes.
What about like hats? What you guys' hats stand for?
I'd say no hat.
Yeah, probably not a hat.
Yeah, it probably depends on the environment, but you're
Yeah.
still safer without it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you get this one, well, maybe 3, 5, I don't know, however many steps in the interview process there are, but you get, you know, these very few interactions. So, probably best to just go risk-free on that.
Unless they specifically tell you it's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, err on the side of don't.
And I would tell you if you ask me, because I'm kind of like Tim. I'm screening, I'm interviewing, I'm helping make the decision. If you ask me that question, I'll tell you. You know, but I probably won't tell you if you don't ask me because I want to see how you behave.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it comes to like taking notes of an interview, do you guys have like a preference on like notepad, computer, phone? Like, what's your guys'
So
preference?
should the candidate take notes during the in-person interview, and if so, do we care how they take notes?
I mean, I have a gut reaction, but it's not a good. I mean, I don't know if it's valid or I've even thought about it. I don't like cell phones or computers in meetings
Same.
in general.
100%.
So an interview is the same thing. So I do like notes. I think that's cool. So pen and paper would be my preference.
Same.
Yeah, my counsel, show up with your resume. If they've had you fill out a questionnaire and application, and we do that as well, maybe bring a copy of that because that's a screening tool before the interview for us. Always bring a notepad and a pen or something. The funniest story, one of the funniest stories we have is a guy that came in to interview for really a director level marketing job, and He stood outside my office and smoked for 15 minutes before he walked in for his interview, and he brought nothing with him. Nothing. Didn't bring a resume, didn't bring a notepad, nothing. And we're like, the interview's over before it started.
For me, I don't care as much about devices that you bring in, but I don't want like a giant laptop that is just clunky and you're having to deal with. Like if you have a tablet and you want to take notes on that because you're more comfortable taking notes on that, that's fine. I don't want you to speak notes into the phone, repeating what we just said. I'm also very much against physical note taking, just as personal, because I'm already on electronic device. I don't want to have to transfer those notes, or I want to make them available to other people if I'm on a team, etc. So it's just a habit I've gotten into. So to me, it's not a big deal, but it's going to depend on different people.
That's probably a good one to ask the interviewer too, because there's so much variety of personal preference here that I'm sure they wouldn't mind you asking.
I mean, if you want extra points at Worldwide Technology, you show up with a pad of stickies. And you write your notes, you put them up on the wall, and as we're talking, you rearrange them. Because that's how we take notes in our
On the fly Kanban, right?
Yeah. Prioritization.
So I think another question, we're about at time, but if we can we go a little bit long? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, and if you need to leave, feel free to. Don't feel like you're stuck here. But and also, a reminder, there's still plenty of food left. But so one thing I want to make sure we touched on too is, do you have multiple people interview someone when they come on site? And if so, what's that like, or what should the applicant be prepared for?
Yes.
We always do a team.
So we have like a 4-stage process. So it starts with a code exercise that's all digital, so it's not very personal, sorry. And then that's reviewed by 3 people. And then we have a phone screen from a recruiter. And then we have depending on the coding exercise and the phone screen, we may have another phone screen by somebody in your practice, but it's less likely. And then we do a face-to-face, actually no, we have 5. Face-to-face 1-hour interview. Cross-discipline face-to-face interview. We call it a values interview, basically to see if you'd work well on a team, because we have multiple disciplinary teams. And then the last one is a pairing exercise for developers. So you sit down and write code with a developer. And so ours is pretty big. Sorry, I don't know how that compares to your guys's, but yeah.
So we have multiple stages, but for an in-person interview in particular, we have 3 different sessions. And then we have multiple people from my company participate in each of those sessions, and we try to have it be different people each time, so we can get a broader perspective, because we're going to all talk about you behind your back afterwards. We're going to meet and talk about it in each session, and we're going to recap how that went and try to decide, did anyone else have any questions or problems or possibly, yellow flags, red flags, etc. And then can the other people that also talk with them that day help to give context or mitigate that, or bring up, like, I noticed that too. And then we kind of decide if we want to move on to the next step from that. And so we definitely, have you meet multiple people, but that's really to your advantage too, because we are intentionally trying to give you a better perspective of what it's like to work at our company, the people that are there, and these oftentimes are someone that you might be working with if you actually get the position, and so you want to be able to ask them questions too about what, either their perspectives or what their roles are like, etc. And I love it when people actually follow up with the group, or take notes on the names, or somehow get the names from the person who scheduled the interviews or whatever, and just as a thank you to the group. A thank you in general is great if you just say thank you to everyone or to someone's names, but if you follow up with them individually too, that just sets you apart again. So any extra effort you want to put into that, it makes you stand out more than the other people.
We have a team interview for us, but also before that you meet with, so it starts with chat with me, then a technical interview where they do a deep dive into whatever your skill set is, then kind of more just like who the person is behind the resume type of interview, and then team interview where it's whatever the specific team that you're going to be on, everybody's there, and it's a good way for you to see, okay, do I actually want to work with this group of people, and then they get to figure out, like, do I actually want to work with this person? So yeah, you meet as many people as you're going to be working with, pretty much.
Yeah, for us, we do multiple phases as well. So we generally spread them out across different days. This interview this morning was the first interview. It was 3 hours. But it was a combination of kind of looking for cultural fit. It was a technical interview. But in our organization, you're going to be exposed to at least some of the owners or leadership team, because we're small. You're going to be exposed to people that are not technical at all. And generally, we'll kind of pick a cross-section of the company male and female. We're pretty strategic about that. And then there's going to be, definitely exposure to the technical team. And then usually at the end, there's kind of a one-on-one interview that will be with either me or the other owner of the company that kind of helps lead. So it's usually about 3 or 4 steps for us, and we can mix and match that depending on the role and who it is. And if we're bringing them in from out of town, things like that, we'll smash things together.
And at Mostly Serious, we've got a couple steps too. I've never actually done a phone interview, so I didn't have anything to say about that topic. But just talking to someone over email first, maybe asking a few clarifying questions from the resume if I need it. And then they come into an interview with me, and it's technical, but also a little bit about personality. I'm just trying to get a feel for who they are and what their work style is. And then if I'm pretty confident I want to hire them, they would then go to a culture interview with the president of the company. We're kind of talking about core values and finding out if that person's a self-starter and if they can kind of have a leader mentality. We're a small shop, and so we all need to run the company at times, and so we're screening for that type of thing too. And then if that goes through, then we typically do a coding project rather than doing whiteboarding or anything like that.
I think the key is to remember that interview is a two-way street. So that
Absolutely.
companies aren't just trying to figure out if you're a good fit. You should be trying to figure out if you're
100%.
if the company's a good fit, because hopefully you'll stay there for a while, and hopefully for both sides, for you and for the company. And that's why we really invest a lot of time into making sure it's a good fit. It's funny how much damage a bad employee can do to your whole organization. I mean, we have a 28-person office here, and we have one negative person in that office. It tears apart the office. So we're looking for people that will not only make us better as a team, but also help kind of keep everybody kind of aligned on the same vision. And we would expect the same for you. If you walk in and we're a bunch of a-holes, you don't want to work with us.
Right.
Like yeah, that wouldn't be good. So.
Yes. Question.
Is it best to save all questions till the end, or does it matter if you kind of do kind of like a interactive back and forth questioning?
Yeah. So should we save questions to the end or interactive?
I think it depends. I think there's times, like when we kind of run through, we have some standard set of kind of cultural questions that are kind of unusual, and we're trying to get to specific core values. I wouldn't want you to interrupt that process necessarily, but then we start getting into your experience, then that can all be totally interactive. But if it's, tell me about, do you have a 401k? Those should be at the end, and probably not in the first interview, but questions at some point, it'll be open to that with us if it's kind of an obvious time in the interview.
We try to set expectations with that, especially in the in-person. So we save time at the end for you to ask questions. But if you have other clarifying questions in the middle or something, then that's fine too. But we are trying to be respectful of our own teammates' time too. So we don't want to take too long if we're interrupting a process we're trying to get through. But just ask. I would love for someone to ask as opposed to either not asking questions when they felt like they wanted to, or just blurting out questions repeatedly and not feeling comfortable about it. So. And sometimes we're asking questions ahead of time to try and get your answers to especially cultural fit things like how do you like to work and what your team environments or whatever else, because I don't want to describe what my team is like until after I hear what you're looking for, and so your research will help with that as well. But in that time, like if you ask me, and then what's your company like? I'll be like, we'll get to that in a minute. So don't be afraid to ask, but I may not answer you right away because I'm looking for things when I'm asking you those questions. Yes, follow up.
Is it accepted not to answer the desired salary question, or it's like a must answer question?
Good question. So do you have to answer about an expected salary range or salary?
There's nothing legally that tells you that you have to, but how I coach people is to, same thing with preparing for phone or in person. You need to prepare that probably even before you start your job search, before you interview anywhere, because that salary question is going to come, and you don't want to just get that and be blindsided as if you had no idea that it was coming. You want to research it. You can go on Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn, Google search typical salaries for whatever it is that you're looking for. figure out what it is that you're actually qualified to get, maybe a little bit more, but when the thing comes, either state a range, not like the absolute lowest where you're like, I hope I never get that, but like, let's say you're looking for 50 to 55, state that range and then shut up. A lot of times people will say a number and then they'll be like, but you know what, I'm flexible, and that's like, oh, they'll take less. For some companies, that's what they're looking for. Can I get this person for less? And so if you're going to state a number, state it with confidence, practice it in the mirror, research it beforehand to know that this is actually a number that people are getting in my area for this discipline. I think that's the best way to go about it. Instead of, I mean, you can say, I typically like to see what the full compensation is. Is there a specific range that you guys are looking for? You can kind of like kung fu them that way if you wanted to. But at some point you're going to have to say some sort of number.
And when in the process you ask?
When do we ask that?
It happened to me before that I was asking a person in the company to connect me to an HR director, and this entry point asked me like officially, like professionally on the email about the desired salary, which I felt like I'm asking about the job. You know what I mean?
Right.
I felt like it's too early.
Yeah.
So when you ask in the process that you just mentioned, the process of interviewing.
So I don't love the answer, but we ask pretty early, not necessarily that early, but partly because we're trying. I'm not looking for an exact amount ever. I'm looking. We're going to judge that based off of the quality of the candidate individually, and so we also don't tend to post ranges of salaries for positions too, because it's really going to vary depending on who it is and what skills they provide, what experience they have, what drive, motivation they have, etc. But so we ask early so that we don't spend a lot of time and you're just completely off, a totally different ballpark on what the number is. I do preface that I tell people, like, I save it to the very end of the phone screen and I say I hate asking this, so just give me a range if you can. And if you say you won't give me a range, that's fine. But it doesn't mean that at some point you're still going to have to answer it. And so I have to then judge, is it worth continuing forward with this person not knowing if we're even close to the right amount. So it's awkward for everybody, I think.
Yeah,
I've heard it suggested to not name specific numbers or ranges and just leave it more ambiguous as competitive with average or something.
That can
of
mean
nature.
so many. Okay,
Yeah.
so what? Could you repeat what he said? Because I just totally blanked.
So
I know my answer.
should you make it more generic and saying just competitive with average or something like that, and not give an actual even a range? Should you answer some other way?
I think that's a bad idea. Personally, you guys feel free. I'm curious what you guys think as well, because that leaves it open to what that person thinks is competitive. Because some companies, they think their salary is super competitive or that their benefits package is super competitive, but it sucks. And so what's competitive to one company, you're like, wow, I really wish I would have said a specific number because this is nowhere near what I'm wanting. So give them what you actually want.
Because I've heard if you nail down a specific number or a range, they're always going to try to get you down from that. So to get them to give the initial number and to work them up.
Yeah, it's really frustrating, this whole salary thing, because it's like, I hate, and I tell people this,
The
it's
worst part of all of it.
Yeah.
It's like dating. It's like, just stop playing games. Just tell me what you actually want. So I think the best thing to do is
Broke the internet.
yeah, I think the best thing to do is to do the research, state the number that you'll actually accept, maybe give a little bit of a buffer so that they can come down if they want to play that game, but know where you're not willing to go below as well. And you can even state that, I would not be willing to go below X amount.
Yeah, maybe you could say, I'd expect to get this range, but my absolute minimum, I don't know.
I wouldn't say
I
absolute
haven't-
minimum.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
true.
tricky.
I don't know. I haven't done too much interviewing myself either, so I don't even know.
Yeah, for us,
That
we
was
ask
weird
it
for
super
us.
early on. So we have kind of a questionnaire we have candidates fill out, and we're asking, what are you looking for? What are you making now? We're asking all of that. We won't screen somebody out if they don't answer it, but we have screened people out that have crazy expectations. So, the balance of using different, sites on the internet is sometimes they're crazy. They're not,
Yeah,
that's what I-
not
that's what
Springfield
I'm worried
market.
about.
So, we had an application here recently that guy was right on. I mean, he was right on expectation of what would be a reasonable range for Springfield. That's helpful to know going into the interview process. But we've definitely had people where, okay, you're looking for this. You know, it's a big number. We can afford that big number. But then we interview them, and you know, you don't have any technical skill. You know, we'd consider hiring you, but you'd have to be way lower. You know, you're 20,000 off. That's a struggle. So
And if it's less than you expect, this also makes you why he requires like very less than he or she worth.
yeah, I don't know that that's happened very often.
Yeah. Is it
Usually
a
it's the
problem that
opposite.
they're way under what the
Yeah,
expectation
usually
is?
not. Usually
Yeah.
people are not too low. I mean, we had a position we hired last year where, you know, they asked for a competitive range, and we interviewed him, and I'm like, okay, you can have exactly what you asked for. And by the way, if you do a good job like we expect you are, we're going to reward you rapidly.
Right.
So we try and be fair. We try and treat people based on their performance. Again, we're small. We don't have set ranges or set rules, so we can kind of do what we want.
We try to right size it, and if you are way under from what your skills are, we try not to do that. But again, it's different for different people because you know, if you have, you know, maybe haven't proven a lot of experience yet, but you have a lot of drive and ambition, we might set up something where you can have incentives to get to or whatever else. But then other times, it might be just more of a, okay, yes, we can already tell from what you have done in the past that's similar enough to what we're looking for that we feel like this is a good spot for you to be in too.
And another thing, if you feel like they're asking it too early or you don't have enough information about it, you can say, you know what, I would love to give you a number, but it's really hard to say because one, I don't know what the benefits package is. I don't know what the actual job is. I don't know if this is like a strict 40 hours or if you're going to expect me to work 60 to 80. Like, I need to know exactly what the job actually is to give you a specific number, because you might say, I need 50K, but then the premiums are on the health insurance are like wild. And you're like, oh crap, I need more than that just so that I can afford the health insurance because it sucks. So
I do have the luxury of not ever having to ask or hear the answer to that question.
It's the
surprisingly,
worst.
I've
It is
hired
difficult.
27 people here.
they're all volunteers. It's
Yeah.
weird.
No, we have one guy that jokes that he makes $20 a year. That's why he can't buy lunch. But no, I mean, I think it is an awkward question. I have actually had people ask me what I think the projected salary is, and I've gone so far as to tell them general ranges of entry, mid, and senior level that I am aware of, but they follow the market data. I mean, you can get them on Glassdoor, and so, you know, I always tell people, I mean, every time I've ever given a number, it's been probably higher than what I thought I could get, and it hasn't served. I've never got turned down because of that. I have been asked to go lower, but so I mean, it is important to value the work that you will, or, you know, the value you will provide. So if you're shooting a little high, just make sure you're shooting 10% or 12% high. Don't shoot 50% high.
Right.
Right.
You don't put yourself out of the market.
Mm-hmm. Right. Another good way to find out if you aren't sure if Glassdoor or any of those other places are accurate, see if you can find a recruiter at a staffing agency, because if they are good, and there's not a ton of tech recruiter staffing agencies here in Springfield, but if they are good, they should know the general, like, here's what these 5 companies are hiring people just like you at this range. And it's a good way to start a relationship. They know the market better than Glassdoor typically, and is usually a lot more accurate.
Actually, lately LinkedIn doing something that if you enter your salary,
Mm-hmm.
it shows to you
Yeah, LinkedIn
the
is
expected salary for.
LinkedIn is getting better at that. It wasn't always that great, and it just depends on what people, because you don't know if that data is actually true either, which is like.
Some of you may not know, Greg was a tech recruiter in a former life too. So.
I was, yes.
We still like
it was
him
a dark
anyway.
time in my life.
Yeah. So one more quick follow up on that, because I think it's important too, and I'm running the show, so I'm deciding. So if I receive an offer, you know, can I or should I negotiate? Just as an add-on to that.
Depends on if it's like within what you want or if it's like way low. I think that if it's way lower, you should counter and say, this is what I asked for. It's not exactly where I'm at. You can ask if there's wiggle room, and if they say no on the salary, there's other things that you might be able to negotiate. Like sometimes PTO might be flexible for some places. Sometimes you might be able to get a flexible schedule at some places. There's all sorts of kind of intangible things that you can negotiate if they're hard on a specific salary that might make it worth it to you. But I if it's not what you want, I think that you should definitely try to negotiate, unless it's something that you're like, I have to get this job. Ask the question and just see where it goes from there, though.
I would say, just as general advice too, if you do want to negotiate, give reasons why. Not just,
Right.
I need this amount to pay my bills, but like, I'm worth this because of this research and these things I've done and this potential that I have that I will be able to actualize, et cetera. You know, we don't typically negotiate a lot, but there may be some things that we would adjust on if we needed to. But typically we feel like we give a fair offer. And so if you have an offer from somewhere else, it's not a great idea to kind of dangle that too much and say, oh, by the way, well, I have an offer that's you know this much more, and so can you match that or not? Do it professionally if you're in that situation, and let people know, especially if a timeline comes into play where I need to give an answer for so and so. But again, just be respectful.
We're kind of the same as you, so we don't typically negotiate a lot, and we're typically valuing it based on the experience they bring. So what you're bringing in is where we're going to determine the range you fall. What we have done is often that's a lot less than I was expecting. Okay, come in and prove yourself, and we'll evaluate you in 6 months, and you may get a significant raise in 6 months. But we're pretty big on you coming in and proving yourself, as opposed to we're just going to write the big check up front. That doesn't tend to work out often. So.
Yeah, and that's something, if they don't offer that, that could be something that you bring up as well.
Yeah.
And say, you know what, this is, I mean, even a strong way of putting it is, this isn't exactly where I was hoping for. I was hoping for this. If I come in, can we reevaluate and have it like actually written out that in 90 days or 6 months or whatever, can we actually talk? And if I'm at X level, can I get that extra $5,000 a year,
Yeah.
whatever it ends up being?
Yeah. And if you do that, I would suggest that you try and set some guidelines if you can on what that is, so that you have clear expectation on both sides of okay, yes, I have achieved this, or no, I have not, and what that looks like.
Yeah.
And it just, I think the council is, with all of this, use good common sense and make sure you're super professional and come across the right way. If you come across arrogant and cocky, negotiating will not be a win for you.
Right.
Okay. We're a little over time, but if you have more questions for the group, looks like a half hand raised. Go ahead.
Well, no, just kind of a check on the health of IT in the Springfield area. Are you able to hire most of your employee needs from Metro Springfield? Are you 50-50 out of area, local? How's that working out? Does it depend on the position?
So can you fill the positions with local tech talent typically, or do we need to go beyond the Springfield area to find the talent we need?
I mean, of our 28 people, if you include me as a transplant, I think we're about 90% Springfield. So we're able to find people. We have had job openings stay open for a long period of time if they don't align with the workforce here. Like right now we have this role called the delivery lead. It's not true project management. It's not agile coach. It's like somewhere in between. And so it's like really hard to fill that if you don't have a lot of agile development shops around. And we'll leave it open for 6 to 10 months, and that's fine. We'd rather find the right person than rush it. But in general, like for developer, quality assurance, UX, I don't think any of our job openings have stayed open longer than three months at the longest. We've always been able to fill them with good people from the area.
Yeah, I mean, for us, kind of basically the exact same thing, except for if we're looking, we are on Magento, which unless you've worked at Classy Llama, you probably haven't touched Magento. So for that, we do a little bit out of state, but most of the people we bring on board and we train them up into Magento. So yeah, I'd say at least like the 90+% are just right here.
I think for us, half of our company is already in another market, so we look at both markets as well as some other markets too. But for the most part, we would prefer people to be there on site, even though we do have flexible work schedules and work from home options and stuff like that too. But we tend to not have fully remote people until they have already been part of the company for a while and have kind of become a true graviton, as we say, gravitate. And so we do find good talent, although it depends on the type of position as to what we find in different markets sometimes. But we have a large development staff here at Springfield, and it's been a great market for us. Yeah. Question?
So when it comes to like hiring college students, are you guys very hesitant on that, or what's you guys' standpoint on
So,
that?
what about hiring college students, and what's general practice, or what we're looking for? How do you make yourself stand out a little bit? Kind of leading the question.
We were just talking about this earlier. We're not opposed to it. We just suck at it. It's because we don't want to. At least I'm speaking for myself. We don't want to bring somebody in that needs a lot of training and mentorship, and they're just kind of sitting there, not being able to do anything because nobody is able to actually commit the time to it. So that's one of the issues that we're trying to solve. But as far as if you're a college student looking to get into a place, the people that I've been interviewing very recently, I don't think any of them have had any side projects at all, which to me, it makes me question, like, are you going to this because you thought it was a good degree to get?
Right.
And that's where the passion ends, or is this something that you actually really, really want to do? Because the people that are hungry and that do really, really well, because we have had interns and we have had college students come in. We had a guy who didn't go to college. He just kind of taught himself front-end development stuff, and he had a bunch of side projects and never went to school for it, came in, and he's absolutely killing it. But it's those side projects and the passion that, in my opinion, are the most important things to portray on your resume and in an interview.
Yeah, our company has difficulty hiring fresh out of college because we are consultants. So we are directly billing to our customers.
Same here.
We do have an apprenticeship program, which is designed to give people that support for I think it's 6 months. I think is our apprenticeship program. You're a full employee while you're in it. It's not like an internship, and that's really our biggest chance at entry level jobs. We've had great success in the past when we have had internships and entry-level jobs. Mm-hmm. It's just we've had a big growth. So like the Springfield office, for example, we've only existed for 4 years. We're still figuring out as 10-year plus professionals how to work together. It's not really a good system to put a new entry-level person into. But we're growing towards it, right? So I would expect the apprenticeship program that we have, mostly that goes on in St. Louis right now, which is where our headquarters is, will find its way to Springfield. And that's my hope, is that we will have opportunities to hire entry-level developers.
So for us, we're totally willing to hire college students. In fact, one of our development leads is a guy we hired straight out of college 12 or 13 years ago. We pace that. So because we know there's going to be a lot more hands-on and hand-holding and kind of up-to-speed time. So we'll pace those hires. But we're totally open to that, and we kind of know that that'll be the process. We kind of expect we got to educate you on both kind of real-world development and then also here's what it's like to work at a company. But we're totally open to that, and we've had good luck with it generally.
I think same, just more about the pace of things.
Yeah.
I've got a younger team right now, so I probably wouldn't hire, my next hire probably wouldn't be younger. I'd be looking for someone with more experience, but not opposed to it generally.
Yeah. Kind of a mix for us too. Similar to Ben's company, half of our company or a little more is more consulting, and so you do have to build to your time to them. It's a little bit harder to do that when you have somebody that's kind of newer to the craft, and so make yourself stand out and show your passion and just getting to know the college student as opposed to just seeing a resume come across. Like, I will definitely look at the resumes of anyone who applies, but if I know somebody from the user group or from the Hack for Good or wherever else, you're a lot more likely to actually catch our attention and say, you know what, I've seen them code, I've seen them work with other people, I've met them multiple times, whatever else, you're going to get a better foot in the door. And so, but yeah, we've hired people that are coming straight out of college, as well as we've not done a lot of internships before. We are kind of starting up this new internship thing for our product development team, trying to do. But at the same time, we're also investing in our time to that other person, and so we want to make sure that it's a good experience for them. Mm-hmm. We don't want to just put them in a corner with a desk and say, go write some code for us. We want to actually give you an opportunity to learn and such if you are doing an internship. And so We just have to try and find that balance. But we have had people that are early in their careers, certainly in the past, and even some of the recent hires have been too. It really depends on the person, and so make yourself stand out.
Yeah, we won't do internships unless we think it's an intern to hire around. We won't
Right.
do a 3-month or 6-month internship. We want to know that you're going to stay with us. And we've done that. We've had interns that have been with us a couple years in school, and then we've hired them on at the end of their school. So we're not going to do it if it's 3 months, and I can't train you anything in 3 months.
All right. I think we're going to wrap it there unless there are any other remaining questions. Okay. First of all, let's just recap names and companies, and then we're going to stick around a little bit if you can, but if you need to go too, I know we're well over time, so.
Greg Johnson from Classy Llama.
Ben Pomerenke from Worldwide Technology.
John Alexander, IonWave Technologies.
Miranda Provance, mostly serious.
Tim Franklin, Gravitate Solutions. So come talk to us and hang out if you can. If not, just have a great night. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
Feel free to grab any of those games that are over there.
What are those?
Yeah.